Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you. I'm Dr. Louise James Pearson, a policy analyst here at the Australian Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering, also known as ATSE. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands from where I'm joining today, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respect to their elders past and present. I would also like to extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today, as well as acknowledge the traditional owners of whatever country you are joining us from today. As we come together to share our knowledge and experience, we also recognise the traditional knowledge and deep history of Australia's First People as the world's oldest surviving culture and Australia's first scientists and technologists. Before we go down to today's webinar, I just wanted to start with some housekeeping. We would like to remind all attendees that they have agreed to abide by ATSE's code of conduct, including as you enter your questions into the Q&A channel. This webinar will be recorded and made available on ATSE's YouTube channel shortly after today's session. Captions are enabled today, so if you require them, they should pop up at the bottom of your screen. We're keen for this to be an interactive session, so please be sure to submit your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen at any point throughout the webinar. Before I hand over to today's moderator and our amazing panelists, I thought I'd share a little bit about me. I studied a PhD in biotechnology, looking for a recycling strategy that uses enzymes to break down plastic. My journey at ATSE began when I had a wonderful mentor through ATSE's amidst Engage program. They introduced me to the range of career options that could follow my PhD. I then started an internship with ATSE as a policy analyst, where I prepared several submissions on topics such as climate change and national health strategies. Following a successful internship, I became a full-time policy analyst here at ATSE, specializing in government relations. This webinar series is brought to you by ATSE's National STEM Education Initiative, STELLA, which is designed to engage young people in STEM learning at schools by using hands-on curriculum-aligned resources to explore the principles of sustainability and renewable energy. We have over 280 lessons and over 100 hands-on activities for use in the classroom. You can find out more by visiting stella.org.au. Along with Stella, ATSE creates pathways to inspire young people to pursue a career in STEM through our Elevate Boosting Women in STEM scholarship program. This awards up to 500 undergraduate and postgraduate scholarships. Additionally, our amidst industry engagement program supports motivated PhD students with mentoring and professional development. You can find out more about these programs also on ATSE's website. So the theme for today's session is Beyond Green, the cutting edge of sustainable engineering. As part of this session, we will explore the significant contributions and pathways that our incredible speakers have navigated to help build a greener and more sustainable world. It is now my absolute pleasure to introduce to you the host of today's session and our first speaker, distinguished Professor Vivian Tam. Vivian is a fellow of our academy and a distinguished professor at the School of Engineering, Design and Built Environment at Western Sydney University. As a world-leading researcher, Vivian has made her mark by combating the climate crisis. She's achieved international recognition for inventing carbon dioxide concrete and contributing to UN Sustainable Development Goals. As a winner of the ARC Future Fellowship, Vivian has featured in 100 climate conversations and ranks among the world's top 2% most influential scientists. She also leads field trials with 10 major industry partners, advancing research translation and commercialization. Vivian, thank you so much for joining us today and hosting this inspiring session.
Thank you very much for your introduction, Louisa. And first of all, I'd like to welcome all the students, educators, and other members there of the communities joining us today. I would also like to pay my respects to the elders past and present. As we gather today, we celebrate the International Women in Engineering Day, which is an opportunity for us to celebrate the work and achievements of women in engineering and encourage more young women to join the professions. In Australia, less than 23% of all the graduating engineers are women. So it is very important for us to improve the visibility of women engineers as we work towards gender parity. And the world is actually facing very increasing pressures on our climates, not only about the sea level rising, the temperatures rising, and also we have increasing waste and also limited resources. That's why we want to find out the solutions and also developing the innovative approach to combat these issues as well. At CIS, our goals are to delivering positive influence on key issues for society and also foster diversity and excellence in the next generation. ETSI is committed into our missions to accommodate a skilled workforce to safeguard Australia's natural resources and also ensure sustainable futures for all while lifting participations from people of diverse genders and backgrounds so that they can not only access STEM educations, but also pursue fun and rewarding careers in STEM. We believe each of you who join us today has the potential to migrate and reinforce the future of sustainable engineering in Australia and clean up our futures. Today, we have 3 panelists. Myself, I'll having my presentation a little bit soon after. And then we also have Leila Helen, who is the 2023 Enzo Rizzardo Polymer Scholarship recipient. She is currently a PhD student at Monash University. And we also have Fiona Allen, is a 2023 Elevate Postgraduate Scholar. She's currently a Strategic and Development Environmental Lead and Clean Code at Queensland Limited. First of all, I would like to share a little bit of my view. Thank you for sharing the screen. When I was back at high school, like where you are now, and actually we're thinking about what can we do to making our career. A lot of you probably thinking about what you want to do next. At that time, I know that myself love maths, and I really like to do different kind of, just love mathematics, just love all those figures, this kind of thing. And this is what I love. And particularly like to find a way to solve the problems. Why I like maths? Because I know maths has a lot of different ways. You can go through different approach, but the answers will still be the same. That means you can actually reach the same goals, no matter where you're coming from as well. That is where I like it from. And when I'm looking into my career, we were thinking about like which disciplines so we were looking at when you are at a bit more senior high school. You will need to look into the disciplines. And I came across that engineering constructions are not that hardcore that you would be imagining. Like it's not really just going to site and all those stuff. It is actually could have a soft skills that you can develop as well. You may be surprised. I'm actually a very quiet person when I was a high school student. I just you wouldn't imagine that is like someone that you could be going out and then to actually look into the site and that kind of things. It doesn't really suit me at that time, I feel like. But because of my interest of the surveying perspective, that's why I came across quantity surveying as my first degree, which is it's really measuring different kind of quantity of the components that you need in terms of the materials. And in another terms, it's very similar as accountant for construction, which is where I start my first degree as quantity surveying. As you can see in these figures in this slide in here, I actually on the top left, which is the environmental management, I was looking into research on environmental management and targeting on waste management when I first started my undergraduate. Because I can see that there are a lot of different kind of climate issues as I first introduced that as well. Like waste is something that we can all see from our eyes when you're walking around. There's nowhere that without waste, basically. And that's the reason that I start with that. And I like to find approach that to help recycling. And I'm very fortunate after my undergraduate, I'm able to move to my PhD studies, which is on the top right-hand side. I like to do some kind of a waste recycling and different kind of recycling approach, because a lot of people were thinking about that recycled product cannot be really replacing virgin materials because they are just not good quality. But theoretically, there's a lot of different ways that we can improve it, which is also for my major research currently doing as well. And I'm also looking into green buildings, like how can we make the building greener and also ensure that they can look into the long-term perspective. That's why the life cycle assessment also come as well. We want to ensure that the waste products can be reused, recycled, but also ensure that long-term cost and long-term carbon emission saving, and we are achieving the net zero approach. If you look into the bottom corner, I think also Louisa was introducing me. One of my recent inventions is CO2 concrete, is a carbonated concrete. Very simple approach is just purely injecting carbon dioxide into the recycled product, which is the waste product. And then the product that we produce is very similar as virgin product would do, which is the idea that we can actually reuse the waste product, but also can also achieving similar performance as virgin properties. That means we can actually really directly reusing those waste products as our virgin substitute as well. That is what we are. I'm actually very interested of my research. If you see some other channels that I was speaking, my personal passion is also turning waste as resources, because I can see that waste has a lot of ways to go ahead. But the thing is whether you can actually value, and also how can we value that as well. And there's just a very short introductions about my journeys and also my experience. I'll give it back to Louisa.
Thanks very much. I'll now pass to speaker 2, Leila Helen. Thank you.
Just popping my slide up. Yeah, perfect. So I tried to kind of summarize my career journey so far on this slide. And on the left, you can see this is how I expected my journey to be, which is linear, pretty much deciding on a career early on and then growing in that career for the rest of my working life. And on the right is pretty much how it's gone so far, which is a bit up, down, left and right to get to where I am today. But I guess overall, you're still getting from point A to B, just with a few detours. And I fully embrace this now. And I do believe that all of my experiences have made me more well-rounded. So I just thought I'd go back in time a little bit and go through my journey. So I graduated high school back in 2015. And for VCE, I did English, maths methods, specialist maths, chemistry, French, and accounting. At the time, I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to be after high school, and I very much just focused on doing the best that I could in all of my assessments and subjects. And when it came time to decide what I would do after high school, I was quite stressed, and I felt a lot of pressure to make the perfect decision then and there, and that this decision would make or break my entire career and life path. I ended up in the end choosing an engineering and science double degree at Monash University. Like Vivian, I really loved maths and also science, and engineering seemed like the perfect combination of both of my favorite subjects. I didn't have any engineers in my family or in my circle, so I didn't really understand the full breadth of what engineering is as a career. But I felt like the right decision at the time, so I went for it. And upon arriving at university, I really did fall in love with engineering. I loved the social and team working nature of the discipline, and I loved learning a huge variety of both theoretical and hands-on skills, and seeing, I love solving practical problems as well that could help make a real difference to society. I still didn't know exactly where I wanted to go with my career, but again, I tried the best with my subjects. In second year, after intense deliberation and again stress, I chose to specialise in civil engineering and major in materials science. In 2017, I was really excited when I discovered the Monash chapter of Engineers Without Borders, which is basically founded on the ethos of utilising engineering to improve the equity for people and the planet. I joined the committee, ran some school outreach workshops, and was lucky enough to attend a humanitarian design summit in Cambodia. And this was a 3-week program where we learned about the process of human-centered design. And we applied this process to develop a prototype to assist with the everyday lives of a Cambodian community. And we presented this to the village elders at the conclusion of the program. And this was really one of the highlights of my whole time at university. And it really helped me see the tangible impact that a degree in engineering could provide. So during my degree, I was also acutely aware that I needed to secure an internship to gain some industry experience. And in 2018, middle of 2018, I was lucky enough to obtain my first internship. And it was as a safety engineer, actually, working on assessing explosion risks in storage facilities. And this was quite left field of my degree and really forced me to learn on my feet. I then obtained another internship later that same year, and this was more aligned to my degree. It was as a civil engineer, where I learnt a great variety of technical skills, including drafting in AutoCAD, sizing civil infrastructure such as stormwater pipes and detention tanks. But I think more importantly, I developed soft skills like communicating with engineers, councils, architects, clients, and working effectively in an engineering team to meet deadlines and ensure project quality. And yeah, while both of these industry experiences were amazing and formative, they didn't feel like the right fit for me at the time. So my final year of my undergraduate degree was 2020, and that was when COVID hit. And I saw a winter research scholarship advertised in one of my university emails, and I was stuck at home and looking for things to do, and so I decided to apply. And it was a really interesting, a really exciting project. It was actually utilizing artificial intelligence and remote sensing to help identify urban flood risk. And again, this was outside my usual skill set, as it was almost entirely coding based. This was also my first taste of proper research, and I really loved it. It was rewarding again, picking up new skills, but more importantly, working in a role that could help address such a pertinent crisis, the natural disaster crisis. And I was very grateful to the academic team for that experience. So then, end of 2020, I graduated my engineering science degree, and I ended up following a typical path like the majority of my peers and just entered industry. And the job market was challenging due to COVID. And I decided again to take a step in a completely different direction, and I worked in tech consulting. And I did this role for 2 years. I gained so many insights into industry in this role, especially through working with quite a variety of government clients. And it really helped me further develop my critical thinking and, of course, my communication skills within this new corporate environment. Unfortunately, again, it wasn't the right fit for me, and I didn't feel fulfilled. And so I took a great time to reflect on myself at this point. And I'd had an inkling for a really long while that I wanted to work within the sustainable engineering field. I found the times that we looked at the sustainable engineering aspects in civil engineering kind of the most engaging part of my degree. And it almost made sense. It was kind of a culmination of my experiences from my work with Engineers Without Borders to my research experience, and also to my casual work at Hillsville Sanctuary, where I gained insights towards the impact of human activities on wildlife, and also to the environment that I grew up with in a country town surrounded by nature. And I felt almost, I guess, a duty to protect it and sustain it. And unfortunately, I'd always thought that since I didn't do sustainable engineering as a degree, that it would be challenging to break into this space. So I didn't really entertain the idea in the past. And but now it was time to start thinking about my future. So I finally started to let myself entertain it. And I'd also realized that I'd wanted to return to university at this point and be a part of research, so I could have a more direct hand in making novel contributions and making positive change for society. I scoured the internet for PhD positions in the sustainable engineering space. I bombarded many academics with emails, and I also reached out to my friends who were doing PhDs at the time. I ended up meeting quite a few professors, and I met my now supervisors, Professor Matthew Hill and Dr. Leonie Van Targ, who I immediately clicked with, and they presented me with a project in plastic waste. And yeah, it was really, really nerve-wracking transitioning back to university at the highest level, but it finally felt like I was heading in the right direction. And so I wrote an application and began within about 4 months. So now, yeah, I'm over a year into my PhD. I'm working within the chemical and biological engineering department, which, as you can see, is not the department that I actually did my engineering degree in or my science degree in. I'm affiliated with the CSIRO Ending Plastic Waste mission, and this is something that I'm so proud to be a part of. And I get to work with brilliant, like-minded people who are passionate about improving the state of the planet. Yeah, so my specific work involves trying to improve advanced recycling techniques, which can deal with more difficult to handle plastic waste. And specifically, I'm looking at trying to tackle some separation challenges by using membrane technology, which is lower energy than traditional means of separation. And it's our hope that this will help improve the feasibility of these techniques and therefore increase the quantities of waste that we are able to recycle. And yeah, it's thanks to this bold career that I've also had so many other cool experiences, such as becoming a teaching assistant, running my first university lecture, attending lots of conferences and study programs, and of course being fortunate enough to win the ATSI Ezio Rosado Polymer Scholarship last year, which really means more than I could say and really gave me the confidence and validation to the path that I'm on now. Yeah, so that's pretty much my career under 10 minutes. I suppose my main takeaways are you never know where you're going to end up, and that is okay. Every experience is worthwhile. You can obtain useful skills from every experience, and even finding out that something isn't right for you is useful knowledge. Just because you choose a certain degree, it doesn't mean that you can't pivot. And if you're passionate about something and give it your all, you can pretty much do anything. So yeah, thanks.
Thanks so much, Leila. It's great to hear your career journey. Just a reminder to students and teachers watching, don't forget to post your questions in the Q&A box below so our panelists can answer them later on. I'd now like to pass on to our final speaker for today, Fiona Allen.
Thank you so much. My pathway is a little bit like Leila's, but also very different. So like the pathway to net zero, my career has experienced uncertainties, taking significant investment, persistence, and a lot of hard work to get to where I am today in a role which I absolutely love, and one where I know the 20 years plus behind me of working on ground and in management role in environmental management across high-risk industries has enabled me to be agile and considered and equipped to work in a multidisciplinary team here at Cleanco to deliver some significant renewable projects for the people of Queensland. So a little bit like Leila, I actually, when I was young, I didn't know what to do when I left school, and that's a long time ago. I had no one to guide me. I was a country girl, much like Leila, who did really well at school in sciences and so forth. So off I went to university initially to do a Bachelor of Environmental Science. And but I had a major car accident in my second year, which meant I had to withdraw. I then, during my rehab, I worked in various sectors and eventually went back to university as a mature age student, which is something, don't forget, you can do at any time, no matter how old you are. I went back and I completed a Bachelor of Environmental Management with a major in chemistry. So I'm a bit of a ring-in. I'm not an engineer. I'm very close to. I did a lot of engineering subjects at uni, and I started my work in contaminated land. And the reason I did that is that I wanted to be in the field. I wanted to learn on ground, to understand the complexity of issues and to gain invaluable technical skills, which remain with me today. So a lot of those skills I picked up back right early in my career, I utilize today from time to time. I then went on to work in the Gateway EIS project, a multi-million-dollar project for the Queensland government to deliver the new road system. And shortly after that, I joined the Queensland government and under the EPA, and I worked across a number of regional offices. An amazing experience to work in high-risk industries such as mining, oil and gas. I looked after the BB refinery, the Shell terminal, stevedoras. I also sat on a number of working groups for local government and state government policy development. It was extremely interesting to do that from that side of the fence from a regulator's point of view. I was the scientific lead for some of the most significant emergency incidences we had in Queensland, and I was awarded the commendation from the Minister and the head of the EPA for the work that I did. So I really enjoyed working in the government as a regulator and administering authority to work with clients. It provides you so many opportunities to work in very different areas. So you can work in the actual green sector and biodiversity, you can work in policy like I did, you can work in compliance frame. And I learned a lot about industries and emerging technologies in that role. In my fourth year, though, at EPA, I was headhunted to go work for Origin Energy in the upstream division. And I thought, wow, what an opportunity. So I grabbed it with both hands, and I absolutely loved that role as well. I worked across 21 assets here in Australia and New Zealand, and was the environment lead for the offshore exploration and drilling programs in Australia, New Zealand, Kenya, Vietnam, and Indonesia. In the offshore environment, there's no room for error. And in my role, I was able to work with both the Australian and New Zealand governments on the other side of the fence to develop new policy to support offshore petroleum activities at a time when there was a number of significant offshore rig incidences. One was the Montara in 2009. So very much a focus in the offshore environment for well blowouts and so forth, high risk. I was also the environment lead on the Origin acquisitions and divestment due diligence team, working closely with engineers and lawyers and commercial team members to assess project risks to take them on or to actually sell them to other proponents. During my tenure at Origin, I was also lucky enough to be the lead technical reviewer on the APLNG EIS and I worked across 6 regional local government working groups. I attended all the public road shows with the community. I presented on environmental and technical aspects of the petroleum industries to a number of regional schools. It was just the most amazing experience. But in 2011, I decided to move into Origin's generation business unit to support 8 peaker stations and 1 baseload power generation station. And wow, what a transformation that was from a fast-paced upstream oil and gas exploration production. But when I moved into generation, I was exposed to some really cool energy generation technology across their portfolio. It was a fantastic experience. However, a little bit like Lana, my career turned again in 2014 when all the big LNG projects were completed and the generation business also needed to cut costs at that time to be competitive in the market. Our team was disbanded and I found myself wondering, well, what's next? What's next? I really loved Origin. I really loved the environment, the team, the challenges. And then I ended up working for myself for a long time. It was a big, growing opportunity, very scary, very uncertain, but I found myself working more in infrastructure builds on major linear infrastructure projects like the Balna-Wagulga upgrade, working for like government and doing a lot of work in just general other areas of environment. And then I moved into governance, risk and compliance and worked in quality. I picked up skills and did educate myself in health and safety in the areas for mining and civil construction and aviation. And then my road seemed to turn again in 2022, being out on my own for a long time and then working in some sectors that were unfamiliar to me. I had to stop and I actually reevaluated my career pathway and where did I see my future going. After all, I'd worked pretty hard, most of my life in high risk industries, which do have footprints, not just only on the receiving environment, but also socially. I'd seen the depletion of our natural resources in most of our resource sectors. I've seen the pollution to our air, our water, our soils, the impact to our ecosystems and our biodiversity loss and displacement from projects coming and building. And at that time, I was sitting in a role, I was unsupported and a business that didn't align with my values. So I started to research opportunities to enable me to change my whole career. And you know, I did a lot of thinking about it. I thought, wow, at my age, you know, 25 years behind me of working in industry, do I want to go back to university? Do I want to go back to study? And after talking with the course coordinator for the Masters of Sustainable Energy Management at the University of Queensland, I felt at this stage of my career, this is the change I was looking for. So yes, being old, went back to uni, and I felt it was a way to contribute to Australia's net zero. Really passionate about it. I've seen the back end of industry. I've seen the impacts environmentally and socially. So in 2023, I commenced my first year back at uni. Very, very daunting. After being away, it was a culture shock. I was surrounded by a diverse cohort, lots of engineers, very internationally and based here in Queensland. And I started undertaking what we call sprint subjects. They're done over a 6-week period, very intense. And I had to remind myself that I was also juggling going back to uni with working full time in a role outside at that time of renewable energy industry. So not having that, you know, that tap to understand things from that granular level. I was generally just juggling life's commitments. Plus I'm actually dyslexic. So, which was another layer of complexity on top of my learning abilities. However, I didn't let that stop me. And I'm now 1.5 years in, and the Masters of Sustainable Energy has really offers selected subjects that have shown me the complexity and the challenge for all of us to meet net zero, and just how critical sustainable engineering roles are to support the constant evolving renewable energy space. So I still sit in awe that I get to learn about new technologies, policy development design, finance, energy markets, and so much more in the renewable energy sector at one of the most leading universities in the world in this area. And then at the beginning also of 2023, when I started my journey back at uni, I set myself a goal to work towards joining a renewable energy company, since once I completed my master's in 2026, so I still got a few years to go, but that wasn't meant to be. In January 2024, I applied for a role at CleanCo in their strategy and development team for major projects, a role that I really aspired to take on at the front line of a government organisation, taking up the challenge to achieve net zero on behalf of the people of Queensland. And here I am, stepping into the renewables arena. I brought so much with me, but I've actually learnt so much more. And instead of just building infrastructure like I had in the past, the team at CleanCo worked together to consider many other aspects, such as location and layout plans and the technology available and what's like evolving in our technology space and renewables, the capacity factors of all the different infrastructure we use, our grid connections. What does that mean? You know, we need to work with other government agencies such as PowerLink to find out where we can connect and what are our limitations, and the commercial aspects for our customers. But most of all, we had to work hard to reduce the immediate environment footprint on each project and focus on our community relationships, which form our social license to operate and our long-term partners in all of this renewable transition. So is going back to uni to undertake one of the leading courses in sustainable energy in the world, and whilst working and taking up the challenge in an evolving space, worth it after a diverse career that's familiar in high-risk industries for so long? The answer is absolutely. There is not one day that I feel dread going to my work. In my role at CleanCo, I have an amazing supportive team around me. My boss has worked on some of the most insane renewable projects across the region, and I learn so much every day. Our GM and our CEO are both so down to earth, and it makes you really feel part of something that really matters. So not only do I have the opportunity now by making a very sharp decision, turn in the road in 2022, to learn at one of the best universities in the field in an area I'm dedicated to, but I also changed my career path and now work in a role that I love and one that challenges all my skill sets every day from everything I've collated over the 25 years plus. And I work for a company that's so proud that they're at the leading front of renewable energies in Queensland. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Fiona. It was fantastic to hear about your journey so far and what excites you about the future of sustainable engineering. I'll now pass on to Vivian Tam to go through the Q&A.
Thank you very much. Please feel free to put on any questions that you have on the Q&A. In the meantime, I would like to ask Leila questions. Leila, your presentation is really interesting about your interest of plastic. How do you think Australia plays to tackle the plastic pollution problem? And what step do you think need to take it to move it forward?
Yeah, thanks. That's quite an in-depth question. So Australia, it does have a very high landfill rate. Based off the last plastic flow study, that was 2020, 2021, Australia consumes about 3.8 million tonnes of plastic each year, with 84% of the end-of-life plastic ending up in landfill and only about 13% being recovered for recycling. Quite crucially, through our history, this recovered plastic, about 40% of it was actually exported overseas for reprocessing, and this was often to countries that were overwhelmed already with the quantities of waste that they had. And so we weren't sure about whether that plastic was actually getting recycled in the end. And quite fortunately, following China's ban on plastic waste imports, the Australian government also put in place its own regulations in 2021 and 2022 to ban the export of unprocessed plastic waste. And this was a great step moving forward, but unfortunately, the country which has long kind of existed with this waste export model, it was lacking in recycling infrastructure to cope with this additional volume of waste. So CSIRO estimated that Australia needs an increase in recycling capacity of about 150% just to absorb that previously exported plastic. In addition to the waste export plan, the Australian government has also set some targets in the packaging space for 2025 to have 100% of packaging being reusable, recyclable or compostable, 70% being recycled or composted, and an average of 20% recycled plastic content in packaging. And this is a really fantastic step, but there is a huge gap between these ambitious targets and our current plastic circularity figures. And this demonstrates, again, the clear need for development of recycling infrastructure in our country and also in academia to try and deal with these increased volumes. Additionally, we import about 60% of our plastics, and that means it is more challenging to control circularity and traceability on our shores. This demonstrates the importance of shifting to a make and remake model locally, so we don't have to rely on overseas markets. However, again, this is a little bit concerning because Qenos, which is our main polyethylene producer, just went into administration. So that's an additional challenge we have to deal with to have circularity on our shores. But it's not all depressing. There's a lot of hope for improvement in the country. The government's invested $250 million into the Recycling Modernisation Fund, and there are lots of new recycling facilities that are being developed across the country, particularly in the advanced recycling space, which can capture those more difficult to recycle plastics. And I've also seen some amazing, really innovative work by researchers in Australia to help address the plastic waste issue, and this is giving me a lot of hope. So I guess, yeah, on top of building up infrastructure and research, we also need to increase accountability for companies that manufacture plastics, have mandatory recycling content for plastic packaging rather than just targets, so there's consequences, and I'm aware that this is in progress in regulation at the moment. And we need to encourage companies to design plastic with recycling in mind by removing, difficult laminates and additives and things like that. And of course, also this needs to be supported by better consumer education because, yeah, if we're not putting plastic that is recyclable into the recycling stream, this can cause a lot of issues at the recycling facilities, and that's reflected in our recycling numbers. So, yeah, that's my long answer to the question.
Thanks very much, Leila. It's really interesting to hear your insights. I want to ask a question to Fiona. Fiona, with your Clean Code strategies and development team role that you're currently working at, what do you see is the biggest challenge ahead to support the Queensland government to meet the emission reduction targets, particularly targeting on our climate action plan?
Oh, that's a great question, Vivian. Oh gosh. Well, the Queensland State Government has set a goal for Queensland to achieve net zero by 2050. Obviously that aligns with the Paris Agreement as well. To assist in achieving this, the government has set a target of 80% for Queensland's energy to be generated from renewable sources by 2035. So as a government-owned corporation, CleanCo has a major role in this to identify and deliver projects to achieve this target. And it sounds pretty much straightforward, right? Pretty much straightforward. Just get those projects up and let's get those renewable energy infrastructure in there. Well, it's actually not. We have a strategic objective to significantly increase our portfolio to provide 5 gigawatt fleet of wind and solar generation, but we also back that by a market of low emission firming technologies such as gas, hydro, energy storage assets to our Queensland customers. So, and the one thing to keep in mind is that renewable energy sources do not hold tenures or rights to work on land under legislation like other sectors. So working in the renewable energy space brings complexity, and we work in a new and evolving industry to deliver each new renewable energy project. So being forward-facing, CleanCo means that I need to work closely across a very talented multidisciplinary team to assess the viability of each project, evaluate their risks, and bring projects to life in a challenging legislative, social, environment, and design framework. So there's so many technical engineering aspects that need to be closely considered. The technology selection, for instance, to make sure that we assure that our projects really count. Every single thing that we put in really counts with the highest capacity factor, which is cost effective, has a low footprint, and suitable for the environment conditions where it operates. Very complex, not easy. And we almost also have to balance renewable energy opportunities whilst considering our communities and our key stakeholders who may be affected across all phases of our projects. And then we also need to consider the changes in legislation, implementation of our obligations down into not only our construction new projects, but our existing operational projects. So whilst the 80% renewable target set out is a challenge, our CleanCo teams have some of the, as I said, most talented people around in the industry. We work together to really assess the risks. We select the most appropriate technology and keep up to date with emerging trends, because there's so much coming through in that engineering space in renewable energies, to increase our capacity factors, to increase the safety process of our systems, to increase the longevity of our pieces of infrastructure. We assess the appropriate infrastructure location to generate the most energy within the smallest footprint possible. We also really take in consideration our communities and our key stakeholders and our traditional owners, and we work with them to build those long-term relationships, because they're the ones that we need to keep on, like we need to work with, and they will support our projects long-term. So all in all, my role is very challenging, but also very rewarding, and I absolutely love it, as you can probably hear from my talk, and it presents new learning and problem solving opportunities every day. So I love coming to work. So yes.
Thank you very much. There are a number of questions that under the Q&A. I can see that probably I'll answer the first one. I'll read it out first. Is there a way that we can make recycled materials as high quality as virgin materials? Can you explain some of the science behind why these materials are not as high quality? Okay, that is a science question. I don't know how deep that I can explain to you that I have been researching the past 20 years, to be honest. But in simple terms, waste materials, when you crush it in the lamination process, they obviously have the porosity. That is why making them weak in terms of the performance. If we know the science, if you know why they are weak, we actually can find an approach to improve the performance as well. As in my presentation, I was mentioning about carbonation concrete. One of my approach that using to improving the porous performance is to inject carbon dioxide, and then they can have chemical reactions. There's very simple chemicals reaction that anyone probably will be understand that those as well. Once you have those chemical reaction, actually you can actually improve those porosities. Performance become a bit denser, and that's how I actually improve the performance of those recycled products. And that is definitely, there's a lot of ways that actually we can do to improve the recycled product as similar as virgin performance. One of that is only what I was mentioning, but there's many others as well. That is what I can explain in here. But there's I did spend my past 20 years and probably another 20 more years at least to respond to that. But that is something that is really interesting to me as well. And another question that I can see is for Leila. Leila, how do you use the skills and knowledge that you learn in your degree in your job practically now?
Yeah, I think one of the main things from a degree in engineering and science that you learn is how to problem solve. And that's really applicable across so many jobs. Yeah, I used it in my internships, my research, and I used it in tech consulting. And I think that's why they were so keen to employ someone with an engineering degree, even though I wasn't in IT. So yeah, I think problem solving, I use it all of the time. And then, yeah, otherwise, the communication skills you learn from your degree, your presentations, your written reports, they're really used in industry and jobs. And otherwise, yeah, very basic skills like Excel and PowerPoint. That's pretty much used in every single thing that I've done as well. And yeah, but less so the more complex things I learnt theoretically from my degree.
Okay, thank you, Leila. There's some questions regarding to what do we consider the ethical consequences of working in the coal and gas mining industry? I probably can also group it with another one is what kind of opportunities for impacts that we can see working in private industry and government? I think this is for you, the question, Fiona. Would you mind to respond to that?
Can you just quickly run through that question, the first part of that question again, Vivian?
How do you consider the ethical consequences of working in the coal and gas mining industry, or in general, like engineering industry? And what is the opportunities for the impacts that they are working in the private industry versus government?
Yeah, wow, that's two great questions. So, yes, I have worked in major high-risk industries that are resource industries that have had significant environmental footprints. In those roles that I've held, I always seen it that my role was to actually manage and mitigate as many of those environmental impacts as possible, and also social impacts. So not an easy balance to make, because obviously I'm not a pure engineer. I'm an environmental scientist by trade. So, you know, for some projects, it's about, you know, environment. We take time, we cost you money, we make you do things you don't want to do. So for me, it's about trying to find that balance with major projects and with operations to get them on board, educate them up, and then manage, how do we manage the impact. So ethically, from a point of view, does it sit well impacting on the environment? Absolutely not. But I always think if I'm not at the front foot of that and I'm part of the solution, then it's going to be worse than what it actually is. So there's also in Australia, there's a number of reforms coming through. We're seeing the nature positive reform coming through under the EPBC Act. We're seeing changes on the 18th of June in Queensland, the changes to the Environmental Protection Act to bring in more community community impacts from environmental nuisance like dust, loads and lighting. Being in industry and being in government, so you asked me about that question as well. So basically, look, every project, whether you're sitting in government or where you're sitting in industry, they will have a footprint. It's how we manage and how do we work with the team that we work with to design, to implement, you know, the best engineering that we can to reduce that footprint, to reduce those emissions, to reduce any discharge, and to manage the risks for whole of life. So regardless if I'm sitting with CleanCo in a government organisation, or am I sitting with a developer like WinLab or another company sitting on the outside, my role is always to work in that risk area to reduce the risk by putting in mitigation measures. You can't say government can get away with anything more than what an industry does. We're regulated exactly the same, but we also, as CleanCo, one of our key things is that social license to operate. We think in our backyard, we like this in our backyard because this is what we do in communities. So we work so hard to reduce our footprint, to mitigate our measures, and to manage at the front foot whole life cycle of our projects. So that was makes it exciting and challenging, and it's all different. Every single project's different because every single receiving environment's different. So yes.
Yeah, thanks very much. I also see a number of questions asking about what university can offer us, or whether we have engineers without borders, that kind of questions. And also, I also see quite a number of questions regarding of how can we actually find a way to go to the path that we are selecting as well. I actually want to suggest most of you to attend the open days. I think most universities are running the open days very soon, either in a few weeks' time or in a couple of months time. And I would suggest that you should really go and have a look about open day, because there's a lot of resources and you can actually have some hands-on experience to what we can, or what the university can offer, and then you can actually help you to find the approach as well. I think most of us quite agree with this, and also how we select those as well. There's other questions that I probably didn't have time to go through, but I'll probably pass it back to Louisa to close today's seminar. And thanks very much for the panelists in here. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, thanks very much to our presenters for sharing your career and personal journeys in STEM. Thank you also to all of you in classrooms and offices who have joined today. We hope that you have something to take away from this session, and that it has left you with a better idea of how many different careers you can pursue in sustainable engineering to help build a better world. There are more Shape the Future sessions running this year, and our next session is a very special one on Tuesday, the 6th of August, celebrating STEM in Indigenous experts. So please come along to join us and hear more exciting conversations with other STEM professionals. Your feedback is very important to us, so please take a few minutes to complete a short survey that will appear for you at the close of today's webinar. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time.